What has the war on drugs done to the world? Look at the murder and mayhem in Mexico, Central America, so many other parts of the planet. The global black market estimated at $300 billion a year. Prisons packed in the United States and elsewhere. Police and military drawn into an unwinnable war that violates basic rights, and ordinary citizens just hope they don't get caught in the crossfire. And meanwhile, more people using more drugs than ever. It's my country's history with alcohol prohibition and Al Capone times 50. Which is why it's particularly galling to me as an American that we've been the driving force behind this global drug war. Ask why so many countries criminalize drugs they'd never heard of, why the UN drug treaties emphasize criminalization over health, even why most of the money worldwide for dealing with drug abuse goes not to helping agencies, but those that punish. And you'll find the good old US of A. Why did we do this? Some people, especially in Latin America, think it's not really about drugs. It's just a subterfuge for advancing the realpolitik interests of the US. But by and large, that's not it. I mean, we don't want gangsters and guerrillas funded with illegal drug money terrorizing and taking over other nations. No, the fact is, America really is crazy when it comes to drugs. I mean, don't forget, we're the ones who thought that we could prohibit alcohol. So think about our global drug war not as any sort of rational policy, but as the international projection of a domestic psychosis.
Fuck that, man. You have to legalize, tax, and regulate across the board here. It's crazy to still have prohibition. This is just as stupid as alcohol prohibition was. And when you had alcohol prohibition, what happened? Guess who became more and more powerful? The mafia. Because the mafia provided all the illegal alcohol underground, and they got all the money. So you get all the money, you get more powerful, and you can do more crime. So crime went up when there was alcohol prohibition. What do you think this move just did? I mean, I need you to think about that. Stop and think about that. What did this just do right now? When they decided, we're going to shut down these growing operations in Colorado that are shipping out to the rest of the country. You just handed more business over to the drug cartels, you idiots! You shut down growing operations in the US that are no doubt safer than the drug cartels, and there's less fucking crime associated with it. You shut down the better growing operations, so all the business now goes back to the drug cartels. And the rest of the weed in the other states that don't have it legalized are now it's gonna come more from the drug cartels. You just increase their profits, you jackasses. So they have it exactly backwards, and they have to stop. I don't even think they don't realize how stupid what they're doing is, and that's sad because the same dynamics have existed forever, and it just takes a little bit of research to figure out how backwards your policies are.
You wanna know what this is all about?
You wanna know what this was really all about? The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. That is the most damning admission I've ever read in my life. That's unbelievable! This should be breaking news on every single network, and in a sane, rational world, this would mean that politicians on both sides of the aisle would come out today and they would say, whoa, 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 we gotta decriminalize immediately. This was the whole point of the drug war? This was the whole point, to police hippie communities and black communities because they're anti-Nixon and Nixon wanted to control those populations and make it so that he had more power. If that was the point, this isn't a question. It's over. We gotta decriminalize and we gotta do it now. At the very least, more likely we should legalize. But naturally, crickets in the mainstream media, I'm not sure anybody covered this. I'm not sure anybody covered this.
The use of drugs and drinking, is that an established value of yours that you just don't like drinking and drugs, or was this at any time? Did you
I smoke grass, and I've lived around drugs all my life, and I've lived around booze all my life. I'm not against anything. I'm against the misuse. You can misuse anything, man. You know, you can say the guy's hooked on marijuana, and to some people that's a reality, you know. And then they say one drug leads to another, and other people that's a reality. But the younger people don't see how those thoughts became a reality. Why are we fighting drugs? Why do we spend millions and millions of dollars fighting drugs when you can sell it in the drugstore and it wouldn't be a problem? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. You know, the whole thing is silly. It's not the drugs that are bad, and it's not the people that are bad. It's all the mess that you've got created around the misunderstanding of the drugs. There's nothing wrong with drugs. If you were sick in the hospital and they come and give you a shot to take away the pain, you appreciate the drugs. I think God put everything there for us to use. If we misuse it, that's our fault. And one way we're misusing it, we're fighting against the power that we're not going to overcome. We have to flow with the flow of those drugs.
I'm giving this to you in very brutal, quick terms, but this is the truth of how it goes down. You were the scapegoat, not because they sat down and had a meeting and said you're going to be the scapegoat. You became the scapegoat because your response to the injustice of that system wasn't to play the system, it was to question it. The scapegoat is the person who questions the system. The scapegoat is the truth teller. The scapegoat is the person that says, hey, the emperor has no effing clothes on. I can tell he's naked. It's all a big scam. And then they get punished for that, for inflicting that narcissistic injury.
This is the kind of situation that we're in. Constipated patriarchal institutions are standing directly astride the forward progress of the human race. I mean, you know, if you want to boil it down to a slogan, and I'll just leave you with this, we call these substances consciousness expanding agents. Well, now, if consciousness does not play a major part in the future history of our species, then what kind of a future history are we talking about? You know, are we going to become stupider, duller, more animal-like? I don't think so. Consciousness is our defining quality, and it must be nourished, encouraged, catalyzed, never more so than now, because we have a planet in peril. The entire evolutionary enterprise may rest on the kinds of decisions we make about how we order and carry out our priorities over the next 50 years. We need all the help we can get, and these plants have always been there to render counsel and give advice to evolving human populations that would humbly and reverently seek their input. That's all. Thank you very much.
Now, in my study of animals and humans, it's been 20-some years now, 22 years, I've learned some critical points, critical information. One, the vast majority of people who use drugs like crack cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, the marijuana, the works, the vast majority of those people are not addicted. They use the drugs in a similar way that our last 3 presidents have used them. President Obama has used cocaine, smoked marijuana. President Bush smoked marijuana, widely suspected of having done cocaine. And Bill Clinton also smoked marijuana, right? So most of the people use the drugs in that fashion, the vast majority.
They are more representative of the majority of people than the crackhead.
They are more representative of illicit or illegal drug users.
Right.
That was a revelation to me. I didn't know that. I thought everyone who used these drugs had a problem with them. They were addicted. So, wow, didn't know that. Given that's one revelation for me. 2, in my undergraduate education, one of the things that I learned was that if you give an animal, a rat, for example, a primate, a monkey, an opportunity to self-administer cocaine or methamphetamine or these drugs, they will do so until they kill themselves. That was indication that these drugs were so powerfully dangerous.
I think we've all heard that about the rat that keeps hitting the lever to deliver it over and over and over again.
Absolutely. So as I looked more carefully, one thing that I learned was that if you provide that animal with alternatives, like a sexually receptive mate, like sweet water, or other food treats, you can disrupt the cocaine taking, the methamphetamine taking. So what you find is that they will take these attractive alternatives. So they weren't driven only by another hit of cocaine, as I once thought. That was another revelation to me. And another one was that I was also told that methamphetamine, we're in California here, people in California get crazy about methamphetamine. And I'm not talking about the users, I'm talking about the general population and their beliefs.
Right.
Another sort of thing that I learned was that methamphetamine addicts, if you will, or users, long-term users, are cognitively impaired. They have these brain alterations that show why they behave in aberrant fashion.
Right.
I did a review and I published it last year in the journal Neuropsychopharmacology, a major review of the literature, what people had written and said and what the data says. My conclusion was that researchers, scientists have overstated the findings with methamphetamine, such that the notion that methamphetamine users are cognitively impaired or brain damaged is just not supported by the weight of the literature. So when I think about those things that I just delineated, the fact that most of the users of these drugs are not addicted, the fact that you can decrease cocaine taking behavior, crack cocaine taking behavior, the fact that these guys are not cognitively impaired, all of these things just fly in the face of conventional wisdom. But more importantly, these things drive public policy.
Right.
And that's the thing that disturbed me most, because sometimes people say, well, why not just exaggerate it, the effects of drugs, so the kids can stay off of the drug. You know, if it was a neutral thing.
Worked so far really well, as far as I can tell. I mean,
well,
you know.
Yeah, I mean, you're being sarcastic, right? Some viewers might not know that, but there's 20 million Americans who use drugs, illegal drugs, on a regular basis. So it hasn't worked as well.
I think that we hardly have an inkling as to the real nature of the world and the real history of life on this planet.
Drugs are excellent scapegoats to blame for the problem.